All right, y'all. Today I'm diving headfirst into a wild legal showdown happening down in Texas. And trust me, this one's big. We're talking millions of dollars, some super complex contract law, and yep, a very well-known megachurch at the center of it all. It's between Gateway Church and their founding pastor, Robert Morris. And this isn't just a quiet little disagreement behind closed doors. Nope, it's messy, it's public, and it's got some pretty personal undertones running through it. So this episode, I'm going to break it all down for you. We'll look at what both sides are saying, the surprising dollar amounts being thrown around, and why this case could shake up more than just one church. Now, I'm not just giving you vibes and hot takes here. I've gone deep into the actual court filings. I'm talking real documents, Gateway's application to shut down arbitration, Morris's demand to start arbitration, and the most recent updates on what the judge has ruled so far. So by the time we're done with this deep dive, you're going to walk away knowing exactly what legal chess moves are being made and why. Let's get into it. So let's talk about where this whole thing really kicks off. It starts with Robert Morris stepping down from Gateway Church in June of 2024. And look, this wasn't your typical thanks for the memories kind of retirement. This came after some heavy, deeply disturbing accusations surfaced. We're talking allegations of sexual abuse going all the way back to the 1980s.
Now, the reports that came out were detailed. According to the claims, the alleged victim was just old when the abuse began, on Christmas Day, 1982. And the abuse allegedly went on for over 4 years. At first, Morris tried to frame the situation as a moral failure. You know, one of those vague, sanitized phrases church leaders sometimes use when things get messy. But that didn't last long. Eventually, Gateway Church and their board of elders came out and said, yeah, no. They only found out the full truth in the summer of 2024, and they didn't sugarcoat it. In their words, Morris had been running a decades-long campaign of misinformation and mischaracterization, which that hits different. That's not just a one-time lapse in judgment. That's a whole system of cover-up if what they're saying is true. And then came the legal hammer. Morris was indicted in Oklahoma. Not one, not two, but 5 felony counts. That's when this situation officially left the realm of internal church drama and entered full-blown criminal territory. So now, with all that explosive background we just talked about, the resignation, the felony charges, would we really probably assume Robert Morris would just kind of fade into the background, right? But that's not what happened. Instead, almost right away, Morris shifted gears from criminal defense to, get this, a full-on financial battle with Gateway Church. First, he asked the church for a cool $1 million, money he claimed were vested benefits. Basically, his version of severance pay. Like, hey, I've earned this already. Okay, fine, that's one thing, but buckle up, because that was just the opening act. Morris then requested an ongoing retirement plan. And I'm not talking some modest pension. He wanted $800,000 per year until he turned 70. Then, after that, $600,000 every year for the rest of his life. Or his wife Debbie's life, whichever comes last. That's not a retirement fund. That's a lifetime salary extension. A financial pipeline that could run for decades. But he didn't stop at the cash. Morris also wanted the rights to his books, his written materials, his sermons, his videos, the whole archive. On top of that, he asked for access to his social media accounts to be reinstated and wanted control over domain names like pastorrobert.com. Oh, and then there's the life insurance thing. Now, quick sidebar, a key man policy is life insurance a church or business takes out on a super important leader. If something happens to that person, the money helps keep operations afloat. Usually the organization is the beneficiary, not the spouse. But Morris, he asked for that beneficiary role to be handed over to Debbie. Here's the kicker though. Gateway Church says their policy expired back in 2020. So he was asking for a benefit from something that might not even exist anymore. At this point, you're probably thinking, did Gateway say yes to any of this? Nope. They shut it down hard. In their court filings, Gateway said they had both contractual and ethical reasons to say no. They brought up Morris's complete lack of remorse over the situation and pointed out that, look, this is donor money. It's tithe money. They've got a responsibility to steward that well. This wasn't just a numbers fight. It was about accountability.
about whether past agreements should still stand when new truths come to light. And that's where this whole thing really starts to heat up. Back in 2011 and 2013, Robert Morris and Gateway Church signed formal employment agreements. Then in 2014, they added a whole separate compensation plan, kind of a long-term benefit setup, and all of these documents had one thing in common. They spelled out exactly how disputes like this should be handled, and it was clear as day. First comes mediation, and if that doesn't work, then you head to binding arbitration. All written out, signed, sealed, no guessing.
Fast forward to April 2025, Morris makes his move. He files to demand arbitration. He's basically saying, look, I didn't leave voluntarily, I was pushed out, and with everything that's happened, mediation is a waste of time. Let's just skip it and take this straight to arbitration. And from his perspective, after the criminal charges, the public fallout, he's thinking that any chance of sitting down calmly with church leadership is just dead in the water. But Gateway, they clap back hard. In May 2025, they file a motion with the court asking to pause the arbitration. Like, full stop. They're basically saying, nope, not so fast, buddy. Now, at first, that sounds kind of backwards, right? I mean, they're the ones who agreed to arbitration in the contract. Why would they try to stop it? That's where it gets super strategic. Gateway rolls out three major arguments to try to freeze the arbitration. First, they say Morris didn't even try mediation, which according to the contract is a mandatory first step. No mediation, no arbitration, simple as that. Gateway's like, you can't just skip to step 2 because things got uncomfortable. That's argument number 1. Now, the second argument, it gets real technical, but is slick. See, the original agreement said that if mediation failed, arbitration would happen through a group called the Institute for Christian Conciliation, the ICC. Back then, it was part of Peacemaker Ministries. But here's the twist. The ICC has changed hands twice since then. In 2016, it was handed off to an organization called ICC Peace. Then in 2021, the intellectual property got transferred again, this time to a whole different group, Ambassadors of Reconciliation. So Gateway is saying, hold up, the ICC we signed with doesn't even exist anymore. This is a whole new group, and we didn't agree to this setup. And the contracts had a backup plan for exactly this. If the original ICC ceased to exist, they default to arbitration under the American Arbitration Association, the AAA, a more neutral mainstream forum. So what Gateway is trying to do here is change the arena. Instead of going through a faith-based arbitration body, they're pushing for a venue that's potentially more impartial, less entangled in church culture, and more aligned with civil legal standards. It's smart, it's subtle, and it's totally based on legal fine print, not emotion.
All right, now let's talk about Gateway's third big reason for trying to hit the brakes on arbitration. And this one's huge. It all comes down to what the arbitration agreement actually covers. Gateway saying, look, some of the stuff Morris is demanding, that's not even in the contracts. Basically, they're arguing that a chunk of his claims falls outside the written agreements that included the arbitration clauses in the first place. So what does that mean in real terms? Well, Morris isn't just saying you owe me because it's in the contract. He's also pulling in verbal promises, things that were never written down but allegedly said. And his legal team is using terms like promissory estoppel, which in plain English is like saying, you told me something, I trusted you, I made big decisions based on that, and now you're backing out.
He's also tossing in fraudulent inducement, meaning you tricked me into this deal by lying or leaving things out. And guess what those claims center on? Yep, the big money stuff, the $800K per year dropping to $600 for life. That's the core of his retirement demand. But Gateway's like, nah, man, that was never part of the written agreements. If you're making claims based on handshakes or hallway promises, that's not stuff we agreed to arbitrate. So not only are they trying to stop arbitration altogether, they're also trying to narrow the scope. Even if arbitration does move forward, they want the court to draw a line around what can and can't be settled there. Now here's the ticker. Gateway didn't stop at just 3 arguments. They added a 4th, and it's a clever procedural move. They said, hey judge, even if arbitration is allowed eventually, we should hit pause right now for the sake of justice. Why? Because Morris is about to face a serious criminal trial in Oklahoma. And if arbitration runs at the same time, that puts Morris in a tough spot. He'd probably have to plead the 5th, not testify, so he doesn't accidentally incriminate himself in the criminal case. But here's the problem with that. His testimony is key to deciding whether he's entitled to the benefits he's demanding. Many of those employment agreements, They've got morality clauses baked in. Stuff that says if you're involved in criminal or unethical behavior, your benefits can be voided. So if he clams up to protect himself in court, Gateway's like, well, how can we evaluate his claims fairly? We can't cross-examine him. We can't verify anything. That puts Morris in a legal chokehold. He's caught between two massive risks, civil and criminal, and whichever move he makes could backfire. This isn't just a church split anymore. It's a high-stakes legal chess match with money, power, reputation, and possibly prison time all on the line. All right, so after all that legal back and forth, Morris pushing for arbitration, Gateway slamming the brakes, all the wrangling over who gets to decide what and where, the big question is, what did the court actually decide? Well, here's the latest as of July 2025. A district judge down in Tarrant County finally stepped in, but instead of handing down a definitive yes or no on arbitrations, the judge kind of nudged both parties. The court gave Morris and Gateway a 30-day deadline to agree on an arbitrator. That's it. No dramatic ruling, no gavel slam, just a quiet push back toward the original game plan, Christian arbitration, the way both sides had agreed 2 years ago in those early contracts. So it's like the judge is saying, look, I'm not going to resolve this for you. Go back to your own rule book and figure it out. That's a legal update, but what about the bigger picture? What's actually been happening inside Gateway Church since Morris walked out under that massive cloud? Let me tell you, it has been rough. The legal filings and media coverage paint a picture of a church in serious turmoil. And one of the first and hardest hits, money. Tithes and offerings have dropped a lot. And for a mega church like Gateway, that's huge. That's not just less money for lights and snacks. That is the lifeblood of how the whole place runs. And with donations down, the dominoes started to fall, staff layoffs, cuts across the board. It has been a tough, painful reset. And it's not just about finances. The people have taken a hit too. By October 2024, reports said attendance was down 22 to 24%. That's nearly a quarter of the congregation just gone. It got so bad they had to cancel Saturday services at 8 of their 9 campuses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's not a little tweak in the weekend schedule. That's a full-on contraction of church life, a reset in rhythm, scale, and community. So yeah, it's real. It's deep. It's more than headlines or court documents. This whole saga, Robert Morris's fall, the legal chaos, the financial fight, it left a real scar on Gateway Church, a once massive ministry now trying to figure out what its future even looks like.
This whole arbitration saga is not the only legal mess Gateway Church is dealing with right now. They've got another fire burning, a class action lawsuit brought by some of their own members. That's right, congregants are challenging how the church handled their past tithes, basically saying, hey, we gave in good faith, but where exactly did that money go? And then there's Cindy Clemisher, the woman who's come forward with the abuse allegations against Robert Morris. She's filed a defamation suit against the church too. So now you've got lawsuits coming from inside and outside, financial instability, leadership shifts. It's a crisis hitting every single front. And right in the middle of all this, the leadership's trying to keep the wheels turning. They've named a new senior pastor, Daniel Floyd, who's set to take over sometime around August 2025. It's clearly an attempt to stabilize, to reset, but man, what a storm to walk into. And look, I can't wrap this up without saying this. At the end of the day, this whole mess didn't start in a courtroom. It started with a man, a leader who, if the allegations are true, chose to step outside of the very truths he once preached. And that right there is a reminder for every pastor, every elder, every church staff member, every believer in leadership. Our private lives matter just as much as our public ones. The weight of spiritual leadership isn't just in the sermons, it's in the example, it's in the quiet moments, the integrity, the character when no one's watching. Because if Robert Morris had lived right, if he had walked faithfully according to the true teachings of the scriptures, Gateway Church wouldn't be in this storm right now. Thousands of people wouldn't be hurting. The community wouldn't be fractured.
And here's the thing, it's not just about them, it's about us, me, you, every single believer, because one day we might be the ones in positions of influence. We might be the voice others look to. We might be the ones leading the next generation. So the time to live right, to build character, to walk in truth, it's now, not when the spotlight's on, but when no one's looking, because what's
hidden in the dark will come to light. And when it does, may it reflect the grace, the humility, and the righteousness of Christ, not scandal, not secrecy. Let's be leaders worth following now, not later. Thanks again for joining me on this one. If this hit home for you, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep the conversation going. Catch y'all next time.